Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this joint European Commission, European Parliament press conference. Alongside me for the European Commission is Commissioner Wopke Hoekstra, who you've already seen on this stage earlier in the week. And we also have the head of the European Parliament delegation at COP29, Ms. Lydia Pereira. We will, as usual, take opening remarks from both of our speakers and then get into your questions. And I will give the floor first to the Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Tim, and ladies and gentlemen, very good to see you again in what is the halfway point in the week, at least in theory. I'm sure we will have some long days and hours ahead of us, but clearly all for a very good reason. My assessment still is this will be a very steep climb, but you know we're putting all our efforts into it and making sure that we do that with all the countries and interlocutors here available. I'm truly delighted to be here with the head of the delegation of the European Parliament, Lydia Pereira. As you are aware, and as I am very much aware, European Parliaments are my guardian angels back home, and also truly a force for good and a force for ambition in the domain of climate action. So really delighted to have such a large and strong delegation from our Parliament here and also here present next to me at the table. That is extremely important. A couple of words, ladies and gentlemen, if I may, on the state of play. Again, you know, we're into the middle of another intense day of diplomacy. I just came from a meeting with my dear friend Simon Steele. This morning we had a meeting with the European Union and AOSIS, and also we just left a meeting with the High Ambition Coalition. We had the COP presidents at our EU coordination meeting and a range of other meetings going on in the hours and the days to come. And increasingly, of course, we do have an understanding where all countries stand, and yet, of course, we need to look for common ground on each of the elements. We will continue to take our leadership role. We truly invite others to do the same, including, of course, the presidency of the COP. Few specifics, but deliberately also not too many on the main items. In terms of NCQG, we're very much looking forward to the first version of the text. I'll reiterate that we will continue to lead by example as a European Union. And yet at the same time, if you look at the size of the problem, it is of tremendous importance that all with the ability to do so rise to the occasion, and we do make sure that the most vulnerable, and I was again reminded of that this morning when talking to the SIDS, are the ones who are indeed getting the money and are being helped. In terms of mitigation, I do want to acknowledge the G20 Leaders Declaration that was adopted in the early hours of yesterday. I know that seems like a very long time ago. I know it is also physically far away, but it is, the way we view it, is an endorsement in its entirety of the outcomes of COP28. And I'm mentioning that because, in our view, there is no drifting away from the UAE consensus. It's rather the contrary. The only way is and should be up in terms of transitioning away from fossil fuels and making sure that we further enhance our mitigation policies. So that is a crystal clear element that we will focus on also in the days going forward. In terms of Article 6, we're embarking and we're taking part in fruitful conversations. Certification, transparency, verification continue to be at the heart of that. I think there is a very clear understanding on the why and the what in that domain, but we do need to make sure we create a system that has the integrity to then also do what we hope it's going to do in the years going forward. And therefore, this start actually is so very important. Finally, let me just reiterate that we'll do all we can to make sure we get the right language, let's say 21st century language, on gender and on equality in the text. Let me close off there, and Lydia, very much looking to you now.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Ms. Pereira.
Good afternoon. I believe that a successful COP29, a successful agreement on climate financing is in the interests of every country. Unfortunately, we have been witnessing extreme weather events more frequently, more violently, and let me remind the audience the wildfires we've witnessed and experienced in Portugal in September, at the same time that we witnessed floods in Eastern Europe. More recently in South Spain, Valencia and Malaga were severely affected by catastrophic events. And therefore, climate change is absolutely in front of us, to which we have to respond. On the one hand with mitigation, but obviously on some occasions, given that climate change effects are irreversible, on some regions we also have to provide assistance on adaptation. And so in light of this, I also would like to welcome the agreement reached at the G20 level, which paves the way for encouraging the parties at COP29 to also foster a strong agreement that creates a good dynamic for next year. I do believe as well that we need mechanisms to ensure that polluting is costly or becomes costly, and investing in energy efficiency and clean technologies is profitable. We have been leading by example in the European Union, and I actually had the opportunity as rapporteur on the carbon removal certification framework to deliver on this important matter, but we would like to see that there is a strong involvement from the parties going in this direction, and in particular in delivering on international standards. And just one last remark: the agreements made in the past are to be held for future reference. So we would like also to see that commitment, in particular when it comes to the agreement reached in Dubai on the phasing out of fossil fuels. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I will now take some questions. I go right in front of me there, Kate, in the third row. Yeah, microphone is coming. Sorry, Robert, it was Kate first, just in front of you. You're in the fourth row.
Kate Abnett from Reuters. Thank you. I have a question for the Commissioner. Commissioner, has the EU started floating numbers on what you could accept for the NCQG? Have you told other parties that you could accept 200 billion, for example?
We deliberately do it in the other way around, and I think that is also the way it should be. We first need to design, what elements have to be in place in the overall text, in terms of Article 6, in terms of mitigation, but also within the financial domain. What is it that we can count? What type of elements of the solution space do we have? And it is only once we have established that we can have a meaningful conversation about the exact amount. Otherwise, forgive me the analogy, but otherwise you will have a shopping basket with a price, but you don't know exactly what is in there. So as much as I appreciate the focus of all of us, also of myself, what will the end number be, it is important to determine the elements first, so that you can have an informed conversation about what an ambitious and also realistic number could be.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. I will go to the gentleman that grabbed the microphone then, in the row behind.
Thank you very much. Robert Hodgson for Euronews. It's about the various elements that might make up the quantum that everyone wants to know about. Mr. Hoekstra, you mentioned that you met the Association of Small Island States this morning. Were you able to assure them that the EU, at least, is committed to increasing the amount of direct grants that might be available to developing countries, and that carbon credits, for example, won't make up a disproportionate amount of the quantum when it is agreed? Thank you.
Well, there was truly an excellent conversation we had this afternoon, and with High Ambition, and this morning with Oasis, and there is a clear and broad acknowledgement how much there is that unites us in I think almost every domain. And there is a clear desire also amongst the European Union to be of very concrete help to those constituencies. We are united in our ambition, and we see that they are in no way responsible for the damage that is done, but are on the receiving end of the problem. So that should solidify the solidarity not only of the Europeans, but frankly speaking of the whole world. So that was indeed exactly the nature of the conversation.
Okay, I'll move to the other side of the room. I'll go first to the third row. There's lots of hands. I'll get us to as many as I can.
Thank you. A question for Mr. Commissioner. Benjamin Legendre from AFP. We are 2 days before the end of COP. Do you confirm that there is not yet a consensus between European countries on the figure you can commit on for the NCQG?
You mean within or?
Within European countries, there is not yet a consensus on this figure. We heard that a lot.
It's my read truly is a different one. We are back home, already, very much united, and we've all signed up to the mandate that the presidency of the EU and myself have been given. But if you're then with all 27 abroad, it strikes you immediately, how much commonality there is and how united we are. And I truly have to say, like at the last COP, there's huge value in having not only the various members of parliament, but also all the member states here who truly do an excellent job in advocating, advancing the position, not of themselves, but of the union as a whole. So we're united. We're also united in the specific thing, on the specific item you were referring to. Having said that, I don't think there is any value to discuss these type of things publicly before we have established the base, as I was saying to the previous question, before we have established a clear base of what it actually is that we should put a number to.
Okay, I'll take a question in the front row here on this side.
Kamran Gasimov, Real TV Azerbaijan. We have two agreements between European Union, European Commission in July 2022, also in December 2022 for green energy. And how would you assess Azerbaijan's cooperation with the European Union in energy supply, also especially in green energy in the future? Thank you so much.
So maybe two comments. One is we will continue to engage with countries across the world who seek to speed up their transition, and that is of pivotal importance, regardless of where we are on the globe and what our history might have been also in the domain of fossil. We need to transition away from it, and we are very much open, and we're putting a lot of money on the table. We're engaging and embarking on partnerships across the globe to make sure the transition, the green transition, takes shape with speed, also outside of the European Union. That is one. The second thing, and that is of course much more imminent, than where we have a very constructive but also very intense dialogue with your country, is in its capacity as co-presidency, where the leadership of the co-presidency is also very much needed, as always, to make this into a success. But maybe Lydia, you would want to comment as well.
Well, I believe that when it comes to the investment on green energy, clean technologies, that's the way we can we can decarbonize and foster economic growth. And it has to be in an honest and transparent way, the approach towards the same objective, having green energy, having having energy that is reliable, that is constant, and therefore it is important that all countries, not only Azerbaijan, but all countries have the conscious and the mindset shifted that the future is through the clean technology, clean tech and green energy, and not specifically on fossil fuels. I'm referring to this because I hear a lot that some countries want to backtrack on this matter, and I think that this is absolutely not investing in the future. It is investing in the past, and delivering for future generations is therefore investing in technology, innovation, and so I do expect that countries are conscious of this and that they will deliver at the end of this COP.
Okay, thank you very much. I go to the second row here on this side. The microphone will come to you.
I'm Rohini from Down to Earth. I have two questions. One is, what is EU's views on financing for debt distressed nations? Is there more focus on provision? And the second part is, what is EU's view on, what is EU expecting out of the outcome from the UAE dialogue?
I didn't understand the last bit.
Could you maybe repeat the last bit?
On the UAE dialogue. So what outcome are you expecting?
So first, on the whole financial package, we're looking into all the various items, and I know debt relief is also something that is very high on the agenda of some, and yet, and I do understand you would appreciate a more specific answer, but I'm not going to comment on each of the various boxes because I don't think that is going to be helpful in terms of the negotiation. In terms of the UAE consensus, because I think that was what you were referring to, it is crystal clear that no one can or should pretend that the previous COP didn't happen. The reason we're having these COPs, the reason we're all investing so much negotiating capacity in these get-togethers is that, then thereafter there is the clear expectation that once you signed up to something, you actually do it. And the last COP was very specific about transitioning away from fossil fuels, and that implementation thereafter, should be embarked on. So at the very least, we should take that as a floor, but frankly speaking, we as the European Union expect that we move upwards, given that there's so much to be done in this realm.
Okay,
please.
Sorry.
Can I just comment? I want again to refer to the UAE consensus and say that, I totally agree with what Commissioner has just said, but I also believe that it is in the interest of the previous presidency of the COP also to be in the lead of reaching the compromise or delivering on the compromise that was reached last year. So I trust our colleagues, and we had the opportunity to meet them. I trust our colleagues from the UAE to be strong advocates for what was achievable last year in the wording on transitioning away from fossil fuels.
Thank you very much. Yeah, a question on the aisle in the middle. It's the fourth row. There's a microphone coming from behind you. And from the other side.
John Inger from Bloomberg News. Commissioner Hoekstra, in your opening comments, you mentioned the need to get 21st century language on gender in the text. Who is pushing back against that, and why do you think they are? Thank you.
Well, in your news articles, you've seen some analysis on this. My experience is that it typically doesn't help most of the time to call out countries here at center stage. So I'm going to refrain from doing that. But what I am going to say, also to those with a more conservative inclination, to really look into the merit of the matter we're discussing. This, I truly feel we need to acknowledge all people from all backgrounds, from all genders, and that should be reflected in the way we look upon the world, also in these type of texts. So that is what we will push for as European Union.
Okay, same row then. I go to Zia next.
Thank you. Zia Weiser from Politico. About the mitigation language, I'm wondering, will the EU insist on restating the transition away from fossil fuel language, or would you be also happy with a more vague reference to, not walking back on the UAE consensus? And same question for Ms. Pereira. Do you think the EU should insist on that language? Thank you.
I trust that the negotiations will be in line with what was achieved last year. And therefore, if we would backtrack on what was achieved, then it would represent as well of the failure of last year's COP. So I'm optimistic about keeping the language as it is.
Yeah, and I think always with these type of negotiations, the only way is moving up. It can never be moving down. Otherwise, there is no value. And if you disagree, you can always fall back on agreed language, but you cannot go below agreed language.
Thank you, Commissioner. Again, I'll go to the aisle. The gentleman in the pink shirt in the third row. The microphone is coming here.
Hello, Sinan Rajba from Tagesspiegel background. One question, one of the EU's aims in the negotiations was to broaden the contributor base, that countries who are capable of contributing to climate finance should contribute. But what leverage does the EU have to do that, to make other countries become contributing parties besides being very credible?
Well, the interesting thing here is that it is not just the EU advocating for this. There's a large coalition of, I think, more than 150 countries that have clear ambitions in terms of climate action, who demand that all the money that is needed is being put to the table. And that implies that, and I very much subscribe to that a leadership role clearly is expected from the European Union. And yet, if you look at the size of the problem, it is not just a matter of fairness, given the affluence that a range of countries have managed to establish in the last decades. And by the way, fantastic for them, well done. But also a matter of making sure that the math adds up. And that is why it is so important that all the developed countries, but also all others who do have the ability, rise to the occasion. That is the only way we're going to arrive at the levels of public and private sector financing that the problem simply needs. So rest assured, it is not just us. It is a far larger group who sees that, because otherwise it will simply not add up.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. I'm looking a bit further back in the room.
Can I
yes, of course, sorry.
It is the European Parliament's position, one specific call on the broadening of the contributing base, and we specifically referred some countries that have now another responsibility today, and so our view is that we do have to be credible in the negotiations, every party. And therefore, if today the consequences of climate change are much more visible than 30 years ago, then all the countries responsible for it also have to jump into the table and put the money where their mouth is. And therefore, we would like, and we expect that there is some movement, be it more specific or in a more broadened way, but at least that there are some movements in expanding the donor base. Because after all, we are talking about climate financing COP, and if we do not deliver on that, with everything that has been referred to, in particular from the EU, and the willingness to jump in, but we need the others to move forward. You mentioned credibility. It is true that we have been leaders in the fight against climate change, that we have put forward very concrete proposals for decarbonization of our economy, but we need also the assistance of the other countries to be able to actually make sure that the countries are further assisted and supported in this, that is a global effort.
Thank you very much. Yeah, question straight in front of me. Yeah, lady with a hand raised. Yeah.
Hi, it's Marta Montojo here from Agencia EFE. Mr. Commissioner, what is the EU position on who will be, which flows will be counted as the new climate finance within the NCQG? Will it support, or does it support, that north-north flows are considered, or only north-south, as developing countries are asking? Thank you.
In general, and again, I know this is disappointing, but I also have to keep an eye on the negotiations. But in general, we try to count as many of the things that are helpful for our friends and partners in the Global South. And that is why I've mentioned the money the European Union has always put on the table. Out of the roughly 100 billion, that is a third. I have been mentioning the private sector money that we have been bringing to the table. I've mentioned the MDB money that will be substantial. And clearly acknowledging that is a different category. There are, of course, other countries who have been paying, who might not be part of the developed world, but are still doing meaningful things. I do think it makes sense to at least connect the dots between all these various amounts.
Okay, I think we've still got time for a couple more. I'll go here in the front row.
Lucas Knigge for Table Media. You always said that one prerequisite for putting forward a number is the widening of the contributor base. Now China has already signaled that they're willing to be more transparent about that. What is the new prerequisite then to come forward with a number? What else has to happen until you be transparent of what is discussed on an EU level? Thank you.
Well, first of all, we have indeed embarked on fruitful conversations with our Chinese counterparts. But the world contains many more countries who are not in the developed category, and yet at the same time have accumulated significant affluence. So we're having conversations with all of them towards the end of this COP.
Okay, thank you very much. I will take one more then in the second row because we've still got a couple of minutes.
Farid Hassanov from BBC News Azerbaijan Service. My first question is for Ms. Pereira. It's a month ago, European Parliament adopted and also adopted a resolution on the human rights records in Azerbaijan, and also called for sanction on some Azerbaijan authorities. I wonder if you had the time to discuss this issue with Azerbaijan authority within the framework of the COP29, and actually when the European Parliament adopted this resolution, they called European Commission to stop a gas deal with Azerbaijan. Did you have a conversation? Did you have a discussion or meeting between European Parliament and European Commission in this regard? And what was the outcome? And my second question is about for Mr. Hoekestra. Azerbaijan side criticized EU of boycotting the COP29 in Azerbaijan and said they failed to do so. What was your comment on that issue? Thank you so much.
I can tell you that we have not yet met the colleagues from the Committee on Foreign Affairs from the Azerbaijani Parliament, but we will, and I would be happy to report on that when it happens. Thank you.
And if I get you correctly, sir, you were asking me to reflect on the criticism that the Union received. You're referring to last week. Is that what you mean? Yeah. So I mean, in general, I think conversations between partners and nations are always there to sort out the things you agree on and also the things you don't agree on. Having said that, I do think it is important that all of us manage to make sure that whatever bilateral criticism there is, whatever conversations are ongoing, we separate that from the indispensable role and the role of neutrality a presidency has to play. And I do think it is very important whenever we embark on these type of international negotiations, particularly with all the difficult geopolitics that are going on, that a presidency shows the ability to play that role. And that is what we will continue to advocate for.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you, MEP Pereira. That brings us to the end of our time. We will let you know throughout the week if there are other press opportunities for the European Union delegation. Thank you very much.
The sound continues to be not optimal.
Yes.